Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Now I've kind of run out of cool technical bits to do, and I've not got any new shiny RC bits. There are various bits somewhere in the global mail system, but when they turn up is anybody's guess. Anyway, I've got the remains of the metal tool set to fit, and some etched brass engine covers for the back. All minor things, but I think they'll look just that bit better when it's all been painted. I've also got some solid core wire to finish up the lights install. Before we get started, it's worth mentioning I'm going for a standoff scale here. There are some really lovely diorama quality Heng tanks around, but I'm going more for utility. Something that looks a lot like a real Tiger, but something that can be run without worrying about pinging bits off if you bump into something. Right, the first job is to fit some metal tools. Unfortunately, they have their mounting posts in a different position to the Heng ones. It's not the end of the world though. We can mark roughly where the stock tool sits with a pencil, remove it and line up the metal tool with the marks. Mark where the new posts want to go, keeping them in line with the stock holes. This particular spot has the PCB that runs our LED scanner just under it, so we need to be careful not to drill all the way through. A small drill bit in a pin chuck works a treat, as it's easy to control just how deep we go. The smaller shovel next. Unfortunately, the metal one doesn't have the nice little cover on the end, but it wouldn't take much to make one from some scrap plastic. The mounting pins are not surprisingly not in the same position as the Heng ones, so we need to mark where the stock shovel comes and use it as a guide for the metal one. Mark where the holes need to be drilled and partially drill them. Same again for the axe. Like the shovel, it doesn't have a cover for the edge, but that's not a big problem. All it needs is a little bit of plastic with a slot cut into it. But then it's all too easy to get carried away with the detailing. The idea of standoff scale is, does it look like what it's supposed to from 6 feet? If it does, it's fine. The kit of metal bits also comes with a sledgehammer, and I'm not entirely sure where it's supposed to go. The only other tool from the Heng set are the big pliers. I can't imagine a hammer would be a very good substitute for them. Of course, a lot of tanks back then were tweaked by their crews, so it's entirely possible they might have mounted one somewhere to use as a general purpose persuader. I think I'm going to have a good think about that and have a look at some Tiger pictures. We'll need to remove the tow cable so we can fit the etched brass grills, and we'll need to take the upper hull off so we can drill the holes. Here's the PCB that runs the LED scanner. It's right under one of the holes. We'll need to peel it off to make sure we don't accidentally drill into it. Even if you don't have something vulnerable, like a PCB getting in the way, it would still be a good idea to pop off the upper hull so you don't get plastic swarf in the gearboxes. We could drill the holes out using a pin chuck, but we're not worried about depth anymore, so we can use a wheel brace, which will be much quicker. I'm using a 1.8mm bit, but since the quality of the metal parts isn't perfect, it's a good idea to check before you start drilling. The hole size is just right so the tools are a tight fit. They will stay in well enough for now without using any glue. The unused holes will get filled when we strip the hull of all the bits just before we paint it. We'll probably just use some good old isopon filler. While we're up at the front, we can make up some cables for the lights. Again, standoff scale. I'm using some solid core wire so it will hold the bends while the glue dries. It needs to get bends in it like a zigzag. It runs between the light base and the little lump near the front armour. It's not quite the right shape, but it's enough to give the idea. To hold it on, we just need a couple of spots of medium sino, then very carefully place the wire. And it's the same on the other side. It'll take a while to dry. When it does, we can drop a little more sino on just to make everything really solid. Once it's painted, they should look pretty good. If nothing else, the little stub in the light base now has somewhere to go. Brass bits next. These are the Tajan ones, which are fairly nicely detailed. There's some others that fit 1/16 models with different details and different prices. To cut them free, use a sharp knife and press down on a small bit of brass that connects the part to the frame. Don't be tempted to use pliers or cutters. The brass is so thin you'll probably just bend it. Until they get glued down, the grills are rather delicate. One of them is already slightly warped. I think it got hit during shipping, and even though it was sandwiched between two tough bits of cardboard, it's still warped. We don't want to accidentally glue the intake hoses to the hull, so to be safe we'll remove the clamps and the hoses. It's only 2 screws per side. First, we lay the panels on the hull and make sure it all looks like it's all going to fit. There's a fairly large tolerance, so we'll have to be careful to get them in just the right spot when we glue them down. The outside dimensions are pretty close, so we'll get away without trimming the edges. Right, I'm going to use some more medium cyano, putting several drops along where the top and bottom edge meets the hull. We don't need a huge amount as it will wick its way under the brass. Place the grill on the glue and very quickly get it into position. Once the glue grabs, you'll end up damaging the brass trying to get it off again. Gently hold the brass in place for a few seconds and make sure the glue has got a good hold of things. Same goes for the other three. If the brass is a little bit warped already, you'll need to hold it down a bit longer so the grill doesn't pop free. You could, if you want to be extra secure, run a little extra cyano along the side so it'll wick under. Shouldn't really be necessary, but it won't hurt if you do. Well, that's them on, and I think they look pretty neat. A little extra fine detail goes a long way. When they're painted and not so bright and shiny, it should all come together quite nicely. If you really like the whole etched brass thing, you can get just about all the small parts, like the tool clamps, various hooks and other details too, for the 1/16 scale Tigers. But that gets just a little bit too close to diorama modelling for me. And that brings us to the end of this week's instalment. With any luck, we'll have something a bit more interesting than drilling holes and gluing brass, even if it's on a different model. Maybe one with wings. We'll have to wait and see what the man in the big red van brings me. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like watching glue dry, by all means hit the like button, and if you're not already, why not subscribe? It's free after all. Bye guys.